I should read it.
Sorry.
I would like.
Oh, I haven't read it.
I'm reading.
It's really good.
Scary.
Like
Cujo and Gerald's Game are both really good.
the book that has Shawshank Redemption in it is very good. What is that? Different Seasons.
Running Man is cool.
Oh yeah, the Peter Bachman.
He's got a couple of short fiction things, like short stories that are really, really great, I think.
Survivor type. You ever read that one?
Yeah.
That's a sick story. Sick as in good and also sickening.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, I found that part where I've been looking for that part where he talks about the stars.
Oh yeah, do it.
It's on 151.
Kick ass.
The skyland still shone overhead, cut in two by the black bow of the shade. Far above even the skylands, hidden but present nonetheless, shone the myriad pinpricks of fire the outsider had revealed. They too held lands unknowable in some incomprehensible fashion. Silk found himself more conscious of them now than he had been since that lifetime outside time in the ball court. Colored spheres of flame infinitely far.
Cool.
And then, like a couple paragraphs later, he talks about, it's really funny. This paragraph is funny. Hyacinth's needler had fallen to the floater's carpeted floor. He retrieved it and put it into his pocket with the cards, then sat squeezing the ball between his fingers. It was said to strengthen the hands. Minute lights he could not see burned on, burning beyond the skylands, burning beneath his feet, unwinking and remote, illuminating something bigger than the world. I just like it how he's like, it's said to strengthen the hands. Also, there's all these stars out there.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's how a 17-year-old dude thinks. I think that he's like, I gotta pump myself up, and also the entire universe is this. Oh my god! I feel like that described me.
It's interesting there in that paragraph you just read, Jen, that he talks about like lights underneath their feet, right? Mm-hmm. Is that what's going on? On the first page, with the bit that Jordan pointed out, one of the visions he has is of lights beneath everyone's feet, like cities low in the night sky.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he's talking about.
Did you talk about stars?
The book opens with that nightmare.
Yeah. Lights beneath their feet.
Yeah, because he knows inherently that they're in a round enclosed thing because you can see it. So like the outside of the ship, there's stars down there and there's stars up there.
Yeah, right. The stars aren't necessarily above you. Just we think that way because we have a sky. So we think, oh yeah, stars are up in the sky, but stars are just beneath us as well.
Exactly.
To the left and right.
The second book opens with that getting buried nightmare where they're digging a grave and hit stars at the bottom of it.
Yeah. That part's awesome.
Yeah, stars are underground, ladies and gentlemen.
The Epiphany is really good. It says so many things that happen, and it's really it was really crazy to. I've talked about this before, but it was just really crazy to read the second time right after I finished the last book.
Yeah.
I feel like I want to go back and read it every couple weeks or whatever. What?
No, I mean I think that's great. I'm so happy about that.
Sanic says, I wonder if there's a flat world subculture.
Yeah, right.
I mean, in a way, it is flat, right? It's just curved flat.
That's one of the most amazing things I've heard in my entire life.
Curved flat.
Well, it's all on one side. It's basically flat, and then you go.
I do think it's odd that there don't seem to be many people investigating the nature of their world, i.e. there are at least people investigating the nature of our world. There are people who have been hey, what's in the sky? What's a star? And it seems like that sense of scientific curiosity is
I think it's
maybe less so.
What are the flyers? What are the what's going on with that?
Well,
that's kind of what, isn't that what Blood is doing? And like, he's trying
Yes.
to get flyers to figure out what the fuck they are, right?
I think they just want to take his jetpack.
We got to kind of consider that what we may be dealing with here is a bunch of people who are loaded onto a ship as embryos with robots to teach them how to live once they get born, and then 1,000 years after that, what kind of culture would have been developed? Which already they have robots in place to program their culture to simmer down now, you know?
Yes.
And just keep a lid on it till we get there.
I mean, I feel like they probably have people investigating their world and they're satisfied with the answers. You know, like they have answers, they're satisfied with them. That's, you know, which I think is not all that different than what we have. Like, you know, like we're not really.
Well, and then you have
we're not really.
your monks who are and your black engineers who are still bucking the rules and finding out other things, and we're only looking at Viron because clearly the Travantes have taken a completely different route, and who knows who's in there.
Yeah, and there's hundreds of cities.
Yeah, so we don't know. There could be people who are doing like crazy shit.
Yeah,
but probably not, or else they would have like fucked something up, right?
But
they would have definitely.
For Connor's point, like the system is programmed to try to culturally, like that's not culturally rewarded. Like in our system, even if it's not, there's like a certain amount of cultural reward you get for curiosity. I mean, it's still want to tamp it down as much as possible.
Yeah,
but
also,
But think about when the Catholic Church, which is what their institution is supposed to be like, was in charge here, and somebody was like, I think maybe the sun's the middle. He got burnt.
Yeah.
Well, that's a kind of a simplification of what happened.
Like, yes, it totally is a simplification of what happened.
There was lots of people that believed the sun was the middle before that.
Simplification is what this culture has been designed based on. I don't know what you said. I was talking.
Ryan, did you say something? Ryan, are you talking?
No.
I'm so confused.
But I mean, I think in a way it is also an exaggeration of our culture because we're not. It's like there's this idea that curiosity and like venturing out and all that is something that we reward and we value, but ultimately, like, you're only supposed to do it so much.
You're supposed to make an app. That's where it stops.
Right.
Yeah.
You make an app.
And it could also be the characters that we're given exposure to in this narrative, because all we see, most of the characters we see are sort of in this religious mansion, and I think in general,
in a very poor
people
part
in that, in a very poor part of town, exactly, yeah, like these are people who probably not only don't really have access to a lot of like kind of scientific information, but in the case of the Pateras and the Materas, don't really benefit from scientific information either.
Right.
I think that you also probably have a situation where there's like a large hadron collider in some city in the place, and there's these really learned academics who are studying like the nature of the world, and they have these really esoteric, subtle ideas that mean nothing to anyone who's not in that city and that institution.
Yeah.
Like we have in our, like, I think like what Jen was saying, like we try to think of ourselves as like continuing the tradition of the Enlightenment, where like people were coming out and changing the paradigm of our understanding and like producing cures and stuff, and we feel like that's our identity as well. We're descended from that idea, even though we've moved on to a completely different mind state where there isn't like the possibility of changing the paradigm because of some brilliant person's like discovery. Now everything is locked into institutions that have to like, where people's careers and traditions and carrying on the institution has as much with what's allowed to be true and discovered than any ideal.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would assume that it's the same on the world.
Similar. I mean, I feel like it is either more or less pronounced for having been compressed into 1,000 years.
Yeah.
I like when they
And
talk-
I do also think that Tim makes a great point that we're looking at a very narrow band of this place. Like, even in this poor corner of the city, like, we step one foot outside of that, talk to Auk, and find out there's like people who are atheists, probably a lot of them. You know, the congregation has been dwindling. I would assume that there's a lot of atheists who don't buy into all that other crap. They could think anything.
Yeah.
And that's still only within Byron. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then what the fuck do the Flyers think? What have they been sold? All those tiny little Irishmen flying around in the middle.
Yeah. There was some part in chapter 3 that I can't pinpoint right now where Silk kind of muses on the Skylands, and he seems to slip in the idea that the Skylands influence the life and the thought, or either the thinking or the behavior of the people down there.
Yeah.
It's just a little sentence he just drops in. It's just like they're, sort of like subtly affecting us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I highlighted that.
That I can't find.
I might be able to find it. The Skylands, which had been nearly invisible earlier, could be seen distinctly as dawn spread across them. Distant forests said to be enchanted, and distant cities said to be haunted, subtle influences for good or ill governing the lives of those below.
Yeah. Like, that must be misunderstanding. Or mythology.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
No, I think he's talking about the constellations.
Sure.
Like in our world, it's there's a bear and a serpent and an eagle that are influencing life below, and in their world, it's quite literally cities and forests, but they have the same role.
Right, that makes sense.
Well, wouldn't they always be the same?
Yeah, but that wouldn't. I mean, I think you'd still have the I think people would find a way to astrologize.
Yeah. Oh, I think that astrologizing would be built in, because if your astrology is based on a sky that always stays the same, it's really easy to make a regimented, unchanging, controllable culture.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not like a whole bunch of subtle influences went to make your personality. It's like you were born at 2:00, you're like this.
That makes me feel that I've been thinking a lot about in terms of right now and the pandemic, that it really seems very obvious that we're disconnected from the idea of cycles, and that that's one of the big failings that's happening right now is like things
change. We're progressive, we're straight ahead.
Yeah, things changed and people freaked out, and then it was all about the new normal and like trying to figure out how to keep as much as possible the same, and even more importantly, make a same that will hold in this condition, and then
a better.
Yeah, and then so it's like, okay, we're going to reopen, we're going to go forward, and there's been this big kind of disastrous egg face situation of like the leaders clearly not being able to steer the ship through this, and it seems like part of it is because there's no cycle, there's no idea of a cycle, there's no idea of like, okay, we're going to do something different for a while, and eventually that cycle will end. It like has to end now because there's a start and an end, and then when the end happens, we're out of it and we go, there's no more plague. Does that make sense?
Well, everything's so absolute, right? Like now is always now.
Yeah.
Now.
And anything that's worthwhile has to be true now.
Exactly.
When will then be?
It's not worthwhile. We have to discard it and get rid of it and move past it forever.
Yeah.
And then
is now.
And we kind of have like a metaphorical or like the sky that doesn't change, like you're talking about, Connor, as being like really easy to impose upon a society that's supposed to simmer down and never do change. Like we kind of we have that. It's not the sky, but it's the like a sense of everything that we can see is, I don't know, fixed.
Yeah. Pixar didn't have it. Thank you.
Like, there's something, I guess I suspect that there's something about being in tune with cycles that's necessary to survive, and that's why like religions and cultures from a long time ago spent so much effort like acclimating people to the idea of cycles and responding to like.
Been reading The White Goddess?
I haven't gotten much further. I started reading that In the Name of the Rose book and got sidetracked.
Well, White Goddess is all about worshiping cycles.
Yeah, White Goddess definitely is something I have to do a little bit at a time. It's kind of almost like a bathroom book because I gotta like take a break after every couple of pages because it's not real. I don't know. It's so. I'm going on a trip with a lunatic.
Totally. You really are.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, if you get a chance to look yourself in the car for a month with it, you can have a lot of fun.
It's in my little Kindle. I'm gonna keep moving on it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize. I just found out that there's a Heinlein book about a generation ship that has a lot in common with Long Sun.
Ooh, that makes me feel weird.
Yeah,
Which
and
book?
it's from the 60s.
Right.
But I never heard of it before. I knew that Brian Aldiss had a generation ship book that kind of thematically seems a little bit similar to Long Sun, but I didn't realize there was a Heinlein one. And there's a lot of...
What's the Heinlein?
I'm going to look up the wiki because I was like, Orphans of the Sky is what it is called.
That Brahma book is kind of similar, right? What's it called?
The Arthur C. Clarke book?
Rendezvous.
Isn't it?
Oh,
Is that a generation ship?
I thought that was more like a first contact.
Okay. I don't know.
So
Might be
in
thinking of
this-
something else.
In Orphans of the Sky, there's this reminded me a lot of Earth. Most crew members are simple, illiterate farmers, seldom or never venturing to the upper decks where the muties, an abbreviation of mutants or mutineers, dwell. The story centers on a
That's earthy.
Yeah, there's scientists who ritualistically perform the tasks required to maintain the ship, such as putting trash into its energy converter to generate powder, and remain ignorant of their true functions. Which reminds me a lot of, Silk and maintaining the screen.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, it also reminds me of the dwarves in book 1 of the Deathgate cycle.
What's the Deathgate
Maintaining.
cycle?
It's
Oh,
a
man.
rich fantasy novel by Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman, who wrote the Dragonlance stories. But I feel like there are certain tropes in this that you can find in a lot of places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're related. Correspondences are important.
Sure. But I think
I can't recommend.
he's speaking to.
I can't recommend going back to the Deathgate cycle. It does not hold up.
No, it's terrible. They're horrible.
Does anyone
Horrible.
here read Heinlein?
I've
I
read
do.
Stranger in a Strange Land.
Yeah,
Is it good?
I don't.
I haven't read any.
Stranger
He
in a
wrote
Strange
Star-
Land is really good, but I haven't really dug into anything else that he's written.
He's a crypto military conservative guy. He's into Empire. He wrote Starship Troopers, but he was earnestly meaning it.
Yeah.
Veerhoed it into a lampoon.
My dad's into him a lot. I should ask. I know he's read a whole bunch of them. I think I read only one, and it was a book he wrote with Jerry Pournelle, who's also like a deeply conservative military sci-fi guy. But the book they wrote together I probably talked about it to you guys before. It's about these aliens come to our solar system, and they're kind of based like they're like elephant aliens, and the authors structure them around the culture of elephants, and it's a really cool book. The characters are like not, they're kind of like laughable, what weird little cartoons they are, but like all the concepts in the story are really fucking cool, and it's a really strange read, and it's also really long. So it's a strange thing where it's like I'm constantly like baffled as to how stupid the author's idea of what people's internal lives seem to be. But then their ideas about like what alien contact with our world might mean is really fascinating. Like the aliens come and they stomp on us to show us that they're the ones who are more powerful, and now we can have our relationship, which is not like, from their point of view, is not like going to be a tyrannical one. It's just in their culture, that's how whenever you meet someone, you have to establish first of all who has more force. And so when they step on us and we don't surrender or submit, and we keep like fighting back, they don't know what to do, and they have to increasingly like to attempt to show us, no, we are way more powerful. That you need to understand that for us to have a conversation. And it ends up being like a horrible thing that Earth does by winning this, like these really intelligent, we like treat these really intelligent aliens as being like horrible killers, and drive them away.
So it's about benevolent imperialism.
It's kind of about
Exactly.
it's like it's weird because it's these conservative guys who are kind of skewering the interestingly skewering the American mindset of like, if someone fights us, like we're gonna take it to the end, and we'll never give up. We'll always, we'll find a way, no matter how outmatched we are, to defeat evildoers. And the whole time,
wouldn't it also be, from the other's perspective, the idea of American imperialism, where we just think that other places should submit to us because we have more power?
I suppose, yeah. I mean, it seems like there's these guys, these are smart guys who think about ideas, and they can't, they're trying to process those two things simultaneously. But yeah, so Heinlein is hard sci-fi. I guess one day I'd like to read his Generationship book to see how different it is, like, from this one.
Stranger in a Strange Land is really like, I guess in some ways it's hard sci-fi, but it's about a guy who, it's like a human person grows up on Mars and is raised by Martians, and then he's brought back to Earth, and then he becomes like a messiah figure. And so it's like it's a very like spiritual book. I mean, that's where the whole like grok thing comes from, and like it seems very like, I haven't read other Heinlein, so I don't really know, but it seems very unlike other Heinlein because it's like military has very little to do with it. It's more kind of, it to me feels more like in the vein of like almost like Huxley or Orwell.
Right. It's his hippie book.
Yeah, it's definitely like a hippie book. So I don't know.
But
it'd be interesting to read some of authors, because I feel like that's what was on the forefront of Wolfe's mind, and it would be interesting to like contextualize Wolfe's exploration with his sort of the people, his contemporaries and or immediate predecessors.
They're kind of like, those are his colleagues, like those guys who all had engineering or some like serious science job that then became story weavers. Is there something happening where like it used to be that you could, I don't know, was being like a conservative military person once a more subtle, interesting position to take than it is now, and you could have people with like could still entertain big ideas in a way that they can't perhaps today?
I think that post World War II, I think that being a military person became a lot bigger of a thing.
Well, I think that generation, I mean, there were generations of people who all served in the military. like virtually.
Yeah.
So it didn't. It wasn't like now where there's this really strong disconnect between civilian culture and military culture. It was the kind of thing where it's like, well, when I was in the army, I did this stuff, and now I do totally different stuff, or or whatever. So it's like the military-industrial complex has become its own thing that functions separately from most, at least in America, from most people's lives.
The impression that I get from a lot of historical texts or stories or movies and stuff that I've read is that officers in the military in the past may have been considered more like a gentleman, and may have had more like of a liberal education behind them, and that was part of their standing in society. Whereas now I think those people tend to peel off towards academia and are no longer like sort of put into positions of power within the military as much. But that when I read stories, or I don't know, there's like a legacy of like sort of like learned thinking men that, who are officers in the military that may have continued up until like World War II or so, before it started to switch towards the more
I think Vietnam was really where those changes started to happen, and I think that Vietnam was really where people started it was kind of it was almost a different kind of warfare, and so that really changed people's
Korea.
Korea
was pretty fucking big too.
I think
the history of the 20th century. We start with World War I, where war just becomes a completely different thing. And
in the sense of like, so like that's a big shift, World War I, and then I think like any war post World War II is another big shift. Like I think. Like there's two different big shifts that happen there.
But up until the Korean War, you could come back from war and the country would, if you were white, would pay for your education and everything. So then you also see this like the couple generations of men who had, as young people between the ages of like 17 and 19, went to war and fought, and then like came back and like, went to college, got their masters and their doctorates and whatever, and so they have like, whereas now you don't really see that trajectory in human experience as much anymore. Or if you do,
the GI Bill is still a thing. Like you can have your education paid for, but it's I think it's a lot more complicated than that now. I think you only get a certain level of sort of state education out of it, and I've known people who came out of the military and they're like, yeah, I just took the money, like I just didn't go to college, I just took the money.
Well, I also think it's inherent. There's a class thing that's inherent once you lose the draft too, where like when you had the draft, I mean obviously if you're like a certain kind of rich, you can find ways around military service or whatever really want to, but like for the most part it was like people were getting drafted from all parts of society, and now you have the volunteer, so like you could see like would be more likely that there would be someone in the military who would like have visions of like academic careers or whatever. Like now, if you're like poor and you're joining the military because you're like voluntarily, because you're like, this is the only way I could possibly afford college. Yeah. Like in a practical sense, if you're poor, you're probably less likely to want to like pursue a career in academia, because that just seems impractical as far as like money is concerned. Like.
Yeah, and in a lot of cases, you just end up staying in the military. It seems like it becomes, the most viable career path.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. A lot more jobs you can get with connections now, like private security and like consulting and all that kind of stuff. That is like a whole career track that didn't really exist in Korea.
And even coming out of the military, like I've known people who have left the military and like in the army or whatever, they were like master level like electrical workers and stuff, but a lot of that training, which is like really intense and valid and valuable, it doesn't actually translate to the civilian world. So no matter you can be this like master level electrical worker in the army, but then when you leave the army, you have to redo that whole process just to get back to the same level in a civilian job.
Wow.
Wow.
So I think also up until recently, the military was a pathway to a career in politics.
Yeah.
Which has now been recently replaced with YouTube stars and comedians.
And law. I mean, law is, I guess, a big part of that too.
I feel like the law was still there before. Law hasn't been replaced. Law is a mainstay. But now Al Franken and Jesse Ventura,
They're anomalies.
or like we're trying to get a little bit more of like Cenk Unger and Crystal Ball, but like they're all YouTube personalities, and that's their jump off. And Reagan was kind of the first of that.
There's a really interesting This American Life that talks about this like car salesman in Texas who like made like huge innovations in advertising, and he would like send out these radio broadcasts of like come buy cars with me, and then how he like leveraged that into like political power and became like sort of a dynastic figure. Anyway, yeah, but there's all like just having an audience, I guess, is a good springboard into politics.
I think that
in general
proved that it is the key to politics now. Now that celebrities have realized they can be politicians, you can't be a politician unless you're a celebrity, really.
I guess this takes us back to the question of why is like anointed, like towards being called and
he's genetically engineered to be more charismatic than everybody.
Uh-oh.
The theophany engineered?
No.
He also has like no ability for like self-doubt.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
he's just
That's a
like,
function of the
well, I'm
charisma.
gonna go knock over this house.
He has no doubt. Yeah.
I feel like that's part of charisma.
Do Silk's charisma powers function in sort of a way that people are glamored, or do they express themselves in like actual actions and like expressions of personality that people respond to well?
They are moved to be better selves, I feel like. Right? Then we see it again.
Is this like the genetic engineering doesn't mean that like when people see him, they're like, ooh, he's very charismatic, independent of what he does. It's like the genetic engineering makes him do actions that are interpreted as charismatic.
I think he can orate well, too.
Yeah. Yeah, he's given like the skills that go along with charisma, being able to express himself.
Yeah.
And it seems like he's also, I mean, when he's expressing himself and orating, a lot of times he's winging it, too.
He's got a good instinct for speaking. But I think also like one of the main things that make him charismatic is that he just is like on the surface of it, never out for himself.
Except with the tomatoes.
Yeah, when he's...
Oh, but he feels so guilty about those tomatoes.
He does feel guilty about the tomatoes.
I told Kenny about that scene, and he said he was like, "That doesn't sound like that would be in those books." He was like, "That sounds like something from Friends."
Yeah.
It's like dwelling on
intense
such a small
actually
thing.
read.
I was like, yeah, and this person comes in and he has this like fork with a tomato on it, and he's like waiting to put it in his mouth. Kenny was just like, "It sounds like Friends."
Oh, Brett.
Oh my god, I was doing this is an utter non sequitur, but I was doing this install job recently in this like new construction condo building in Columbia. And so you're like in this weird building in the hallways, and there's all these people, you know, it's like people have their condos and they have like only a certain number of ways they can make the outside of their condo like stand out, and so that they'll have like funky welcome mats and stuff, but this one, it said welcome friends, but the friends was like the Friends logo. And I just
Nice.
like could not believe that.
Sucks.
You'd see that and be like, I get it, like the TV show. Like we're friends, just like they are in the show.
Like
I can be
how
friends
would
with you because we both enjoy Friends.
Yeah.
You know, it's I've
Hey,
seen
you
this
make
thing-
$200,000 a year? Me too.
I've seen this
Let's
thing
be
going on just on college campuses, like the colleges that I've worked at, where kids like who are, you know, like 18 or whatever now wear T-shirts with the logos for like Seinfeld or Friends on them.
Yeah.
And like I'm not even sure that like those shows are relevant cultural touchstones for those teens. Like they just get them from like TJ Maxx or something.
Right.
Oh, I had a whole argument with someone years ago about this because I saw this like really young teen in like a total like mall outfit with this Ramones shirt on, and I asked my friend like, "So you think this person listens to the Ramones?" And like my thought, or no, it was a Beatles shirt. It was a Beatles shirt. I was like, "What do you think? Do you think they listen to the Ramones, or like they got this at the malls?" The same question, you know. And they were like, no. Well, for context, it was Sarah Fast, which I think makes this conversation make more sense. But she was like, there's no way someone would wear a shirt like that and not listen to the band. Like, there's no way they would do that. And I was like, I don't know. I think it's
There
just like
is.
fashion. Like, their Rolling Stones shirt is like at the Spencer's or whatever. And she was like, no way, why would anyone ever do that? And then the next week, there was a thing in the city paper where they do that thing where they would go and do like street style or whatever, and they talk to the person about, and the person, there was like this young kid who was wearing a Ramones shirt, like a teenager, and they were like, so, one of the interview little blurb questions was like, so, Ramones, huh? And they were like, what? Like they didn't even know what was on the shirt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I showed it to her, and I was like, you see? And she was just like, I don't believe it. Like it was really funny. But it was like immediately.
It definitely
like,
is.
immediate proof.
I think for us,
Going-
the Friends logo or the Seinfeld logo is like about the show Friends and the show Seinfeld and how they're different from other shows. They have like an identity. But to people who are much younger, that logo means like the 90s, which to them is like a way of thinking. And you know, that I think a lot of young, like the kids at the high school where I hopefully still work at, there was this kid one year who had the most amazing backpack. She got a white backpack and then with like markers drew all these logos on it. And it was such an insane collection of logos because it was like Nirvana and the Friends logo and the Batman symbol and like Korn and like all these, like they were just like really identifiable logos from the 90s that had nothing to do with each other to me. But to this kid, it was like, there's 90s movies, and there's the way that people looked at the world in the 90s, and I can't tell what the fuck that way was. I'm still having trouble understanding when people say like 90s movies or 90s music, what exactly the fuck they're talking about. But for really young people, there's a very like specific definition to that, and like that's the thing that's on their shirt is like mystical Greece, that, you know, where the gods were and where people were.
Oh yeah, well for us,
it's like the golden age.
It's like the 70s or whatever, or the 60s.
Totally.
Like you can make it a like, yeah. I mean, it's like Nirvana.
When I was in high school, I was into The Cure and New Order and shit.
Yeah.
Well,
That
like
was-
Nirvana is like if you can be 27 now, or 26. You could be a 26-year-old and be born after Kurt Cobain died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Logo to a Zoomer is like linear A to a Mycenaean Greek.
I remember when like I was in high school or maybe middle school, and there were like kiosks at the mall that would sell like shirts with like Gary Coleman on it. It would say like, "What you talking about, Willis?" or whatever. And
Totally.
people my age would wear these shirts. They would maybe have seen Different Strokes on like Nick at Night or something, but it was just this like, maybe. I think it was just this like, oh, you know, it's a thing.
Old school.
It endures, though. I was a high school
I've seen
teacher
it in a
like 4 or
commercial.
5 years ago. There was like a group of kids at the school I taught at East Baltimore, like 15-year-old kids who'd be like, "Yo, Mr. Paji, you like Seinfeld? You like Seinfeld, don't you? Who's your favorite character in Seinfeld?" And I'd be like, "You guys watch Seinfeld?" That would be like me watching I Love Lucy when I was a kid, which I didn't, but a lot of people did. But anyway,
I
it's
did.
like,
I did.
yeah,
I did.
I mean, some people do, but you know what I mean, though. It's just like, how do you know about this? Like, but they do. They watch
Yeah.
that. They watch Seinfeld. They find it. It's online, and it's probably on TV still too. Honestly.
I mean, a thing that my mom, one of the reasons that I'm really into television is because my mother, whenever there was like 50th anniversary specials or anything of that stuff, she would, look, this is something that we all used to share. We don't share this anymore. And that's how that television was presented to me. So there is this kind of religious, like it's as important as a colonial furniture thing to me,
Right.
is, the episode where Lucy and Ethel make cakes.
The Chocolate Factory is definitely.
Her
Chocolate
stuff in the
Factory.
chocolate in her mouth. That's whenever you say "I love Lucy," that's what I see in my head.
Me
Like,
too.
I mean, honestly, as a television artifact, I Love Lucy completely made what television was for years and years afterwards. They came up with the 3-camera system, the in-studio audience, all of that.
Still never
So-
seen it.
And likewise, Seinfeld. Seinfeld, I would say, started the golden age of television and informed a lot of how the MCU is able to create such a sustainable, long
There it is.
story.
We made it. We made it to Marvel.
Somebody ring the bell.
Take a shot. Check it up on the video.
Sorry about that, everyone.
they should put Newman in one of those comic book movies.
Oh my God, they should put Newman in one of those comic book movies.
Hunter made the jump from from Seinfeld to Marvel Comics. Man, how'd you do that? That was good.
Oh.
Started in
I
Friends.
have a goddamn essay for you.
I was watching Around the Sun, and Wayne Knight is in Third Rock from the Sun.
Yeah.
And when I remembered that he was going to be in it, I was so excited. And then he appeared. There he was.
Oh,
Wayne Knight. Yeah, we need him.
Third
His
Rock.
character in Third Rock is so awesome.
Third Rock is a good show.
It's so good. It's so good. It's really
I'd like to. Yeah, I
it's
think
great.
it was on Netflix or Hulu for a second a couple of years ago. I think I got to catch up on that and found it.
on Amazon.
Okay.
And, my friend just gave me her password and then canceled her account, and then I just watched it until her account lapsed.
Yeah.
But I recommend it. It's so good. I
Yeah.
don't recommend Amazon, but I do recommend Third Rock from the Sun. And if you have to, you do what you have to do, basically.
You do. You won't judge.
Yeah.
It's a funny show.
A great ensemble.
Is that
Yeah.
Jersey?
Yeah.
What?
John Lithgow.
Yeah. Joseph Gordon-Levitt will never be that good again. He'll never stand with the greats like that ever again in his life.
Right.
That was it. What happened to that guy? He was just in that one show and then
He's
never
had
saw him
some-
again.
He has some kind of.
I really like him in the movie Brick.
What?
The movie Brick, he's really good in the movie Brick.
Oh, I didn't see it.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see that. I didn't like it, so I didn't finish it. Sorry.
I really liked it.
It's a dude movie.
Is it?
Boys. It seems like it's for boys. For 90s boys.
Weird, I don't think that at all, but okay.
It felt like a 90s boys movie.
I mean, I guess in that it feels like The Big Lebowski because they're both ripoffs of Raymond Chandler. But I don't know. I know women who like the movie Brick. I think that Brick is an adorable movie about high school kids.
I don't mean that you can't. I just mean that I didn't want to. You know what I mean? I was just like, yeah, this kind of seems like it's for boys. I don't think that about all media that I consume. But ones that I do have feelings like that about, I'm like, not for me.
All right.
And I think it's more just like a trigger in my mind that doesn't necessarily. It's not what we're talking about. It's like not. It's like truth. It's truth. You know what I mean? It's
Word.
not.
Word.
Hey,
Yeah.
hey, why are there 63 gods?
Because there's our maybe. That's how many friends he has. I don't know.
In the
How many? Why? How come?
where
Maybe
does it
not
say
good.
that there are 63 gods?
They do say
Yeah.
that.
In chapter 3, right?
When Silk is talking to Marble in the little
Yeah.
romantic area, he says, she says, "It was the outsider who spoke to you, you say?" And Silk says, "Yes. I don't know a great deal about him. However, even now, he's one of the 63 gods mentioned in the writings."
Yeah.
Is that an Egypt thing? For some reason, I have this vision in my head of like a list of gods I saw from Egypt, and it was 8 by 8.
Well, the Agniwad was a thing for a while. That's the Hermopolis religion.
And
I don't know much about that. That's the more obscure one. Where I feel like the more popular, when you talk about more popular Egyptian religion, you're talking about the Ennead typically and Heliopolitan religion.
and what is that,
So
9 by 9?
it could be. I don't know anything about about the Agniwad. Say again, Ryan?
Ennead would be the groups of 9. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, the Ennead is like it starts with Atu has Shu and Geb and so on and so on, and eventually terminates in Osiris and Isis and Set and Nephthys.
So 63 is 9 times 7.
Okay,
Are there
Well,
7 or 8
64
days
is
of the? How many days of the week are there in the world?
7.
There's 7.
64 is
Yeah.
8 times 8, right?
Yeah, 64 is 8
Yeah.
by 8.
So you have, but you have the
But the-
outsider.
The outsider could be the 64th.
Well, no, but he says he's one of the 63
Right
gods
back.
mentioned. So
Oh, he's
63
one of the
includes
60.
him. Yeah. But yeah, I guess 63 is 9 times 7. I don't know. I'm just wondering. I mean, surely there was some reason that Wolfe picked that number.
I just Googled significance of the number 63. I can't find anything. It is the atomic number of the chemical element europium, which is a ductile metal with a hardness similar to lead. Doesn't seem relevant.
The table of periodic elements is frustrating.
Yeah.
It's like a Red Hot Chili Peppers album. It's like it could be half as long and it would be so much better. Oh, Sanic says Silk becomes the 64th.
Oh.
What's 64?
8 by 8.
69.
We wish. It'd be awesome for 69 gods. That'd be awesome.
Hell
I
yeah.
am the 69 god.
God,
Guys,
great.
this is disgusting. This is dirty.
Isn't that right, Joe's?
Weird.
But
Anyway,
doesn't it supposed to be Haas? They're
What?
like,
what happens next in the book?
I thought they ask him if he wants to be Pa. How do you say it? Pa? Pas?
I say pass, but I feel like we have to use Spanish rules, right? It's all Spanish.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they're like, I think he mentions it later, or like he has a flashback and thinks about it. Because they don't really show us what happens in Mainframe, but they mention that they can like scan him and he can become Pas.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh,
does he come
wait
in
till you get to Short Sun.
God, or does he become one of the gods that already existed? I have to wait till Short Sun?
That's a good question.
We'll never know.
No, well, no.
No, because he would be different. He would still be different, right? They would know that he's different. I don't know if they know.
No, there's a lot of weird condensing of identity in Short Sun that I think will make that question extremely interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, so
What's happening, man?
I'm moving through the chapter, and I've gotten back to the point of Rose, seething Rose, and I have a question.
Yeah.
Undefiled Echidna hated everything of that kind, blinding those who fell as she had blinded her.
Mm-hmm.
Who has so Rose is blind?
Yeah.
She's the her. Okay.
She's at least partly blind. Well, she has one chem eye, right?
Yeah, she has fake eye.
Yeah.
If you have sex, you can't see the gods. I think that's what she's talking about.
Huh? No, I think she means literally.
Really? Well, Echidna does blind you from seeing the gods if you bang something.
Sure. I mean, there's a metaphorical aspect too, but I think that Rose is thinking about literally.
Okay.
I think Rose feel like it literally happened. That's literally what happened to her.
That's cool.
She fucked the priest. She
You're right.
lost her.
Oh yeah, because probably doing it to a priest is even worse.
Yeah.
All right.
I love Rose though.
I think it's cool. I think you're right.
At times, Maytera Rose kneeling before her daughter's image, and that's referring to Scylla, yeah? Is the daughter? Felt that she herself was Echidna, mother of the gods and empress of the world. Strike, Echidna, oh strike. What is the point of this? It's very short, very intense little appearance by Rose. Is this a horn issue?
Connor, didn't you say that Rose is possessed by Echidna?
Yeah, that she has a piece of Echidna in her, which I'd like to explore more as I read through this reading.
Yeah. You mentioned that, and I read that part that Brian just quoted, and I felt like that was like the clue or like some confirmation.
Yeah.
She says she feels like she herself is Echidna. She's definitely possessed.
And she would have had to have been possessed when she was a little girl.
Yeah, because there hasn't been.
They can't they come and go as they please?
They can only come through the windows. You have to see the sacred colors in the window in order to be possessed by a god.
Okay.
Or something equivalent, like Skyla can do it through Lake Viron and what have yous. Though I would then say that there may also be an audio component so that you can, because like there's odd times, like Taurus possesses Auk in the darkness.
But I think they're by a window. They're by an old window.
But they can't see it, so how is it working?
Well, it makes sense if Tartarus is the god of darkness. It's an audio only situation with him. And I feel like there must be an audio component for that.
It might just be that you have to like. Oh, I guess some people like shield their eyes, like because Min, she doesn't get all of the possession because she closes her eyes because she thinks that she's not worthy, right?
Right. Because Mint rules.
And there's the screen Kypris comes through.
So whatever you just go through her ears. How does that work?
Do you think that she does avoid possession? I mean, she's completely changed by the experience and becomes the greatest general.
Oh, she does become, but someone even mentioned, does Kypris mention to Silk later that she didn't get the whole thing?
Okay.
I think that one of the gods told Silk that it didn't work all the way.
I just definitely think she is profoundly possessed by Styx.
Completely agree with you.
Yeah. And that's why when those Triviganti show up, they're all in love with her and all have sex with her because she is their goddess,
I just found out that I didn't realize Trivigant is like another name for Termagant, which was a god that in the Middle Ages it was like one of their like Christian people's ideas of what pagan gods were. There was like Apollyon and Baphomet and all these kind of weird corruptions of Muhammad. And then there was something called Trivagant or Termagant. And there's lots of I found out about it from like Orlando Furioso, I think. They constantly, there's, knights, Christian and pagan knights fighting each other. And they talk about, they ascribe the pagan knights to being, worshiping Apollyon and Termagant a lot. But then Termagant also then later becomes a word for a shrew.
Interesting.
A shrewish woman. Yeah, and which is all stuff I didn't know the first time I read Long Sun and just recently discovered.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's like a pagan god and a scary woman.
What word?
Trivagant?
Termagant.
Yeah, Trivagant and Termagant come from, apparently, Trivagant was another formulation of the name Termagant. Spelling in the medieval times was very loose. People even spelled their own names differently at different times.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It sounds like
because everybody was.
It sounds like a good idea. I feel like we could benefit from shifting to that sort of mindset.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess I spell my name differently at different times. What I think is people should be more like me.
God help us.
Right, what's next?
I guess we've got him meeting up with Auk.
Yeah.
Oh, I love their striving.
Oh, yeah, this... in the whole bar fight.
Yeah.
Right.
This little Star Wars moment.
I don't like you.
I liked yeah, in the bar fight where Silk it still feels really compelled to read this dead body its last rites, essentially. And everybody around him is just why are you doing this? Or he's not even dead, maybe?
Yeah, that part's so weird.
They're like, oh, he'll be fine.
It starts where Silk looks like Mr. Bean, that he's shocked and is reading the rites to a guy who then, because immediately someone's like, oh, he's not dead, Cully, the big man with the scarred face. But then in the next, so at this point it's oh, Silk's being a clown. But then two paragraphs later they say the dead man was bleeding less than the big man, a steady unspectacular welling from his right temple, yet he was surely dead. So then it goes back to no, Patera's not being a clown at all. He's actually dead right.
Yeah, they just don't want him calling attention to the fact that they just killed that guy.
Yeah.
Right.
It's interesting from the reader, the way that you're jerked around as a reader. But it's this cute moment, but then it's, that Silk's being out of touch is cute, but then it actually turns out to be more appropriate than a reaction than the people who are in touch.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a microcosm of the general Silk experience.
But they're in touch with something else. If part of their reality is that people die at the bar sometime, and then also there's this dude who's never there, who's treating it with reverence, and they're like, "Fuck, dude! This is not how we treat this. He's in a different place."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
But still, you're right. The appropriate way to act when someone dies.
Just before the bar fight, when he's going to the bars, there's this line I really like. And the cellar of every shiprock ruin left standing was occupied by a tavern. Listening to the angry voices that issued from the one he approached, Silk wondered why anyone went there. What sort of lives could they be to which 50 or 100 men and women preferred this? It was a terrifying thought, which reminds me of working at a bar.
Yeah.
Of how, trying to, it's scary to contemplate the lives of people who go to a bar a lot for fun.
Mm-hmm. It was also going to do that to people who came to the video store. You're like, oh, your escape is don't fuck my daughter too. Oh no, I'm sorry. Please don't fuck my daughter too.
That's a sad title. I really think that's
Yeah.
the title.
What?
Sounds like a porn movie.
It is a porn movie.
Oh, okay.
That's what you would see. What porn people were watching.
People
Like,
took
okay.
out porn videos.
From Video American. That's how it
You
stayed
don't remember
alive.
that secret, like, not secret, but you don't remember that room?
I guess I do remember it. I never.
Yeah.
Huh.
The
And
way
that you made a lot of money there, doing that.
Porn? Yeah, we sold porn.
How was the? Would it like keep an updated collection
Yeah,
like of movies?
yeah, constantly.
All right, cool.
We get shipments every week.
Was at the store, was there a guy who was like, this one, no, not that one. Nah, this one based on something more than the titles? Was there like a connoisseur?
Oh yeah. Do you know who that guy was, Ryan?
No, tell me.
It was Kevin Coelho.
Okay.
Oh, right, because he worked there. And he
And he
managed it.
Yeah.
And so did you ever get any, did you witness this process in
Did what?
action? Did he ever explain why this porn movie coming would be good and that one wasn't coming? Like,
Oh yeah, we would talk about it. He would ask my opinion.
and this was based on more than the title. This was, you guys were talking about the content?
I mean, to a degree.
What?
Because I mean, the same kind of stuff often shows up on Pornhub, which we all use.
Okay. So this was a connoisseur kind of selection process.
Sure, to a degree. I can't say that I could really evaluate whether or not Please Don't Fuck My Daughter 2 was good or not. But
Unless
like,
you knew who
I
was
watched
in it.
Pirates. Huh?
Unless you knew who was in it.
Which I didn't.
It's weird to think about a bygone era.
Yep.
I could never go into a video store in my life and porn, especially a serious video store.
You gotta imagine there's a certain person that's like, that's part of the thing, like the
Yeah.
performance,
Yeah.
of, like,
Right.
knowing renting or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean,
Make sure somebody knows that you're doing it.
yeah. I mean, some people would jerk off back there, you know?
How could you not?
That I did not know.
Exactly.
How could you not?
I mean, if you're gonna jerk off anywhere, the place where there's just like a limitless amount of naked photos of people who are like in the middle of having sex, that's probably the place. You know, it makes the most sense.
It's also the kind of place where, like, in order to deter people from masturbation, you'd have to put a sign saying, "There isn't a camera here."
Right.
Was that really?
Right. That's a good.
It's just something work.
That's a good like stand-up comedy joke, Connor. You should work
Thank
that
you.
into your routine if you ever make one.
Will do.
And look, we went to the bar, we went to the cock, and now we're talking like we are at a bar about base things.
Well, I thought I was done.
I also so is the description of the bar that like there was a building, the building got knocked down, the basement is still there, so somebody went down into the basement and built another building in that basement, and that's the bar?
I think so.
Wait.
So weird.
Or they just used the, they didn't just use the basement, meaning like
It seemed to me that like there was a building down in the basement, and people like there was an area outside of that building that people were lined up in or something.
does the building go up out of the basement?
I don't think so. I think the whole point was that it would stay underground in a kind of metaphoric way.
So it's probably a huge basement.
It's some dude's basement.
It's probably a huge basement.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Cool. So people can stand outside and smoke and shit and not get hassled with it.
Exactly. Because they do like smoking.
Yep. I think so. Who doesn't?
Amen.
I like this one sentence.
Baltimore needs more bars to go down into. We don't have
This
enough.
says the seller every shiprock ruin left standing was occupied by a tavern. Left
Oh,
standing.
so the building's still there.
That's what it says, and then it says the cellar of every shiprock ruin left standing was occupied by a tavern. Listening to the angry voices that issued from the one he approached. So wondered why anyone went there.
I read it.
Then it was completely based on my misreading.
That's really funny because I read it the same way, that like a building had gone away. Like,
Strange.
Well, the
Right,
rest of the building is still like a ruin, but it doesn't mean it's just not there.
oh, I
Yeah.
see.
That's reminiscent of East Baltimore, where there are frequently liquor stores in the first floors of otherwise broken down and abandoned buildings,
Yeah.
which is insane. How are you
Baltimore.
able? Yeah, Baltimore, right? But it's like, how are you allowed to have a business in this building? God damn it! Like, this building is rotting and falling apart,
But it has a liquor license attached to it.
but it has a liquor license attached.
Isn't
And that's
like kind of
all
the
anybody
building-
cares about.
That's like the building across the street from where Connor lives. There's like Polonia
Yeah.
trees growing out of the windows.
Yeah,
That's
how
like
can you
the
have a
building
restaurant in that
the
building?
Mercury in. Like the
On-
first two
on
floors
Charles
of the
Street.
Mercury work, sort of, but above that, it's like uninhabitable.
Yeah.
Unless you're a raccoon.
Unless you're a
Unless
raccoon.
you're a raccoon, in which case
Then
it's
it's
nice.
very habitable.
I like this.
Well,
line.
they're fixing
Uh,
their current project is working on the Mercury.
Really?
That's what they're doing right now. Yeah.
What are they doing?
I don't know. I haven't
Right.
really been going.
Wait, whose
I mean, there's
project?
not much reason to.
I missed it. Whose project is it to work on the Mercury?
Joy is fixing up stuff in the Mercury apparently on the second floor, not the third, just the second.
Apartments or
I don't know what the hell she's doing.
okay.
I think she's just trying to make sure she doesn't get any more tickets. Right.
It's code.
Yeah. Well, because
Classic move.
the city came through and ticketed every single building on like around that area as much as they possibly could.
Yeah.
They just had to pay like $16 million to a robot or something like that.
What?
With the ransomware.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they ticketed everybody as much as they could everywhere.
It's weird. How
Like
the-
my boss got a ticket for having a refrigerator in his driveway for an hour.
What?
Yeah.
that ransomware thing should have
Yep.
been so
Around
much
what's
more
what?
of a big deal. Like, that was such a humongous, weird, like almost, I mean, I would say historic moment that our city got extorted for money and the local government completely mishandled it every single step of the way and was defeated, like utterly defeated. Not one piece of
Yeah.
victory that they had out of that situation. They were extorted. The money, the amount of money demanded kept going up automatically because that's the deal. Like, you pay us, and if every week you don't pay us, it goes up. And they refused to pay, and in the end, like, the ransom people were like, "Look, this is not how this works. You don't we don't want extra money. We just want the money from the beginning. Like, pay up." And then the city had to pay up. There was like,
Well, that's what Atlanta got hit like at the same time, and that's what they did. They just paid it immediately, and they paid so much less.
so weird. And then so once that happened, I don't understand why, like, that, I don't know. It's interesting that the Sun, the local media, like, went all in on Healthy Holly when there was like one woman that you could say is the bad apple. But when like
Right.
the entire system like completely fails and there's no consequences for anyone in that system with the ransomware thing, there was like no media sort of like
Yeah.
like dogging on that
Yeah.
issue. It's just gone now. We've moved
Well,
past
I
it.
also feel like there's this weird thing with Jack Young where you just like can't. He's like a non-person kind of. He's like, it's like, what are you gonna do? Blame Jack Young? Like,
Yeah.
he doesn't even want to be there. Like, this guy is like
In fact,
he's like
his
literally
exact argument.
like nothing you can. It's like wasting your breath to criticize him, kind of, because
Yeah.
he just like doesn't give a fuck.
he gave that exact statement to the press when they were like, "We have beat last year's record of the most murders ever, Mr. Jack Young."
Oh, he was like, "I didn't murder them.
I didn't kill him."
What are you
Yeah,
looking at me for?
he's like such a fucking like he's like a non-thing. He's just like he's like part of the background.
I mean, at least he's an interim mayor who had no real plans to ever be a real mayor. You know,
Once again, he's not like a bad apple. He's not an outlier. This is like
he didn't get ambitious all of a sudden like SRB.
Like we clearly have a system in which like anyone who advances in it has priorities that have nothing to do with governing people. Like there's just not. Yeah. It's not like, oh, we got a bum one this time around. Like it's a machine that only makes bum ones.
We have not had. I mean, I will be really interested to see if Brandon Scott can like do anything different because, like,
I mean, it'll be interesting to see how he functions in that context.
Like an actual mayor for any any like metric in so long.
Yeah.
We're a city run by hustlers.
We've just had like people who get appointed from other positions like by default for so fucking long. It's crazy.
Yeah. High turnover rates, really high turnover rates.
Nobody makes it for a whole term.
I don't think anyone wants to. Nobody becomes mayor of Baltimore because they want Baltimore to be a better place. They become mayor of Baltimore because it is a stepping stone to a real job.
I do think it's possible that Brandon Scott is not does actually want to do a good job.
But it will be interesting to see then how he is able to function within Baltimore City government.
I'm not going to overinflate chances of success. I'm just saying I don't think that he's like out the gate. Like all the rest of these people since like O'Malley or whoever was before O'Malley. I don't really remember who was before O'Malley. But all these fucking people have been like, there's literally no chance that they would do anything. Like, before they even get into office. Like, they don't want to do anything. And they so there's at least that he, like, I do think that he wants to accomplish something.
The comptroller changeover, I think the comptroller change is going to be a bigger deal than any change. Like, we've had the same comptroller for decades, and I think it's clear that was a major source of a lot of the issues. So even if a mayor wanted to do something, once they got in there, it's such a clusterfuck that they're just like, I don't know, I might as well try to make some money while I'm here.
Well, and then you have the combination of those two things.
Right.
Like a new comptroller and a mayor who isn't like already totally checked out.
Well, Pew co-owned businesses with the comptroller.
Yeah.
So, like, there's clearly big issues there. So
could have raised some red flags.
Should have.
Joan Pratt will walk away from all this. She's just gonna walk away. The hammer's gonna come down.
She's not walking away.
She's walking away. What?
Oh, sorry, the comptrollers.
Joan Pratt,
Yeah, Joan Pratt is. So
well, it was really interesting to me to see like Dorsey, the way that he like interacts with other politicians, and sort of that there's clearly, I feel like he's a really good example because it's like this dude who has trouble self-censoring and who came in like a tiger, firebrand, like this place is corrupt. And then almost immediately, there was like situations in which he was clearly like becoming diplomatic. Like there was criticisms of Pew that he made that then he had to like walk back early on, and there was an instance when Mary Pat Clark like retired or something, and there's like fundamental policy differences they have, but he was very, very explicit on Twitter about criticizing people who were criticizing her and talking about how you need to respect, we didn't always agree on the issues, but you need to respect that she was a leader. And so I guess where I'm going with this is that once you're in that job, you, regardless of who you oppose or whatever, you have to maintain the sanctity of that job, which necessarily I think also validates the actions of the sanctified people that you're,
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that's what'll happen with
I think
Brandon
that-
Scott. In order to do anything, Brandon Scott will have to play nice with certain people and have to release statements that are like, "I'm not against this person," or like, "Let's not, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater on these developers or whatever." And then it's just like
Well, that's what happens when you
quicksand.
try to operate. That's what happens when you try to operate within a system that is hell bent on not allowing any change to happen.
Yeah.
You can't use the system to make change if the system isn't built for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a complex of careers now, not a like entity that's meant to improve the lives of citizens. It's like a series of jobs. Nice, with some real nice ones up there if you play the game.
We have seen the Skynet, and it is us.
Damn.
Nice cat.
He's got his pencil. He's ready.
Oh, come on.
He's gonna do some writing.
Oh my god, that's adorable.
He's got his little pencil.
Boy.
Oh. Quality.
This is there's like a lot of stuff in this chapter.
Yeah.
I guess we see. I mean, it's the first time that we see a glass working, as a communication device. It's the first time we see Musk.
Musk. Oh God.
It's
Oh
like-
wait.
What?
No.
What?
I was gonna mention something that happened later. Doesn't matter.
Oh. I think that meeting Musk is another point where you can see that this is being written by a teenager. Where he's like, and Silk saw him and just knew this dude was bad.
Yeah.
Right.
He's like the clearest villain.
Yeah. A quintessential killer. Irredeemable. That's the name of the movie starring Musk. Irredeemable.
Irredeemable. Did every house used to have a glass in it? Is that the case?
Yeah, they were like foam, right?
Like everyone had one.
They're like
Okay.
FaceTime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
FaceTime is a really good name for that because that face comes up. The monitor.
I really love sci-fi that didn't anticipate cell phones.
Yeah.
I miss the future that would have become if we hadn't gotten cell phones
Yeah.
to a degree.
It's always the portability that gets missed. Like there's this. I feel like the video calling was this very obvious thing that everybody went for, but it's all with the, big appliances or like phone booths that still exist.
Yeah.
Yeah, or like we just watched that Fassbender thing, World on a Wire, and it's like they have like their phones at their desk that are basically it's like it's like if you have a normal office phone where it's like they're on hold and the secretary like patches it through or whatever, but it's just like there's a cube that your like face appears in.
That's what Cisco has in Deep Space Nine. He has like a little screen on his desk that he can look at. Not like the bridge of the Enterprise where they have like the big TV movie theater screen, where they all look at. But like
at least in Star Trek they have those little like tablets that they're always making.
And they've got
they've got
they
like
don't have video
iPads.
capability.
They have
It's basically
tricorders.
like a Kindle.
Yeah, they got those little
like, it doesn't
iPads
have, like,
that they like write letters on and stuff.
It's the tricorder. I think the tricorder was sort of like an actual. I mean, it's more like a Palm Pilot, but I think that was like.
The tricorder is different than the tablet.
Oh.
It's called a pad or something.
They've got the
Yeah,
tablet. They've got the tricorder, and the tricorder has like different app capabilities, right? Like it can basically do anything. It can basically.
Yeah.
But
And then there's the badge.
Sonic
badge
screwdriver.
communicator.
What?
They have the badge communicator.
Yeah.
Connor.
Oh, It's like a sonic screwdriver from Doctor Who. It can do whatever it needs doing in this show.
But it is
Yep.
funny too, even when talking about that, it's like now you have like in our actual the phone that we have now does all the shit. It's like the tablet and the tricorder
Yeah.
and the communicator.
It's more futuristic.
Yeah.
It's boring from a narrative standpoint.
Well,
Kenny says Kenny says iPhones can't scan a room for minerals.
Not yet.
So, has anyone here read Infinite Jest?
I read the first 200
It's-
pages.
It's sort of a sci-fi in a way, and anyway,
Yeah.
it's like in the very near future, and this is before any of this technology. But David Foster Wallace predicts in Infinite Jest that everyone will communicate with video technology, but it isn't very popular after like a couple of years because everyone's so self-conscious about the way they actually look. And so what they do is they put in an avatar so that you can look like other people, basically, and then that becomes like this whole like element of how video communication happens, which I thought was pretty prescient. You know, like
Yeah.
I think we might be headed in that direction now.
Yeah, give
But they
everybody
alluded to that
another year on Zoom calls, and
Yeah,
and I'm sure we'll see it.
Well,
yeah,
Wolf Longson has that. The monitor's like,
right.
can
I
I
was gonna say
like, will you permit me to like
to switch
mess
it up.
with your face a little bit? I could make you look a lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which is
And I
crazy
think
because
that's cool that-
we know that Sophie's beautiful.
right. Already beautiful.
Anyway. Yeah, it's funny that we're actually talking on screens right now.
We are.
Yeah,
I like that with these screens, there's like an operator element to it, where
Yeah.
like there's an intermediary that is making the connection. Like it's never just like I'm gonna call Connor. It's like, hey, can you see if Blood is there? And
Right.
and then it's like, oh, Blood's not here, but there's a different guy. You want to talk to him? And
right.
like that's so different. But that wasn't even something, I don't know. I mean, this was written in the 90s, early 90s. Like operator really,
Yeah.
like there wasn't a mediation between participants in a phone call.
But
Right.
that's a weird meme that just won't go away. It's also in the Matrix. In the Matrix, when you want to get out of the Matrix, you go to a phone booth. Even though you have a cell phone, you go to the phone booth and you call someone who says, "Hello, operator."
Right.
And they download you out of the Matrix.
Is it possible that Siri and Alexa and that kind of thing will eventually be the primary way that people deal with their technology?
Yes.
Like sort of in the same way that
They'll be the
like computers started with like a command line interface and you had to know the commands and like look up the directory, and then you got the graphical interface to like that has progressed to like be easier and easier and easier and like more of a weird coddling experience. That'll happen with, I imagine, all of our technology over time.
Right. I guess like I've had coworkers. Sorry, go ahead.
That movie, Her.
Right.
Yeah.
I haven't brought myself to watch it.
I will say, like, my
cool.
feeling about that movie is that it's a very good movie, but I can't like necessarily recommend people to watch it.
It's
Like, it's really
dudeish.
disturbing. Like, I felt that movie made me feel like shit. But I do think it's a good movie. If that makes sense.
It's a good movie.
Like,
It's directed by
I feel
Spike
like
Jonze.
unless you're like, you should only watch it if you're ready to feel like shit.
Right.
Nice.
Right.
But that's like, that's kind of like the operator. Like,
I think.
I mean, we do have like Alexa and stuff that's similar.
Yeah, like I've had coworkers and stuff who like use. I don't know. Like I've never been into using the robot voice thing. So like if I need to set an alarm or call someone or whatever, I'm just gonna do it myself. But I've definitely had like coworkers who like have the Apple Watch and like they'll do it. They'll be like, "Hey Siri, like set an alarm for 20 minutes," or be like, "Hey Siri, text so and so this thing."
Yeah, totally.
And it seems very counterintuitive. Like I don't need a robot to do this thing for me because I can just do it. and I can usually do it better than the robot can because the robot has all of these bugs. You know, like it's not perfect in the way that it would need to be for that to work. But I wonder if once that's a seamless experience, if that just makes more sense.
I think it'll be like with DOS
Well, again,
and Windows and Mac OS X, is that you have like people who understand a little bit of the technology who are like, it's I can do this in DOS and I can do it more directly, and I can like, and with cell phones it's like that too. Like with an Android's phone, you can go in and mess with the files that are on the phone, whereas like Apple, there's this huge wall between you and what's going on under the surface. And I think I think it was the same with DOS. Like there was a lot of good reasons not to go to the Apple like big fat icons, touch this and go to the place thing, but that's where we all went. And I think, you know, like that's where technology goes. You have to sell more next year, so you have to find out the people that aren't using it now, they think it's too hard, and make it easier. Then they're our customers too, and that process like never stops.
It's crazy. I mean, I run Linux. Like I am one of those people. But so like whenever I have a problem with my computer, I just go on a message board and I figure out what the code is that I need to type, and I just do it and I fix it. But it reminds me when Kenny had an iPhone and I was trying to just like put an audiobook from my computer onto his phone, and you can't just plug in the phone and you can't access the file system that's on the phone. Like you can't. It's so crazy. That makes me like, I was like literally mad about that. Like I was like angry about that. Like you can't access your own files. The only way you can do it is you have to like drop it through like iTunes or something.
And eventually like
and I think we'll have
access those files, you know.
And we're getting like smart refrigerators and stuff. Like it's going to be
they're the worst.
Across the board. Like every appliance will be with that same thing in mind, where you can't access the files. Like you're the user who, it's like exactly a Philip K. Dick world where you're arguing with your refrigerator because you're not allowed.
Give me the goddamn Apple. Give me the fucking
Philip K. Dick version of technology is more correct than a lot of sci-fi authors imagine technology as being things that will like serve humanity and their interests and needs more immediately, right? Like a robot assistant sounds great, right? Hey, I'm your robot. I'll do whatever you want. Just ask me. That sounds cool, I guess. You know, like on a surface level, it sounds cool. But what it really ended up, the reality is that the robot talks to Amazon and tells Amazon what you're like and what you're into and how to sell things to you. And that's something that only Philip K. Dick, I feel like, or at least particularly Philip K. Dick, like observed about the direction technology was going. You know, it's not going to serve you. It's going to serve, you know, people trying to sell you things. And that's exactly what television was.
I was thinking about that when Mark was talking about people using Siri and it being like clunky, buggy and stuff. But there's like the idea is sold to you that it's easier and more convenient. But in the reality, and that's why people use it, because they're like, it's literally like, you could do this instead. You could just say it instead of using your finger. And even if that's not literally true, you're gonna do it because you were told that it's easier. But like, by you interacting regularly with this thing, you are actually the one like serving the corporation, because you're like helping them figure out how to make the thing work better by like interacting with it regularly.
Well, that's the thing with all like social media companies in general, but most of these web companies where the people are the product, because the actual service itself is free and it doesn't, is essentially useless. But for the companies that like they're making all of this money and data happen.
That's the revolution we're undergoing in industry right now. Human beings being human beings are the product, and the companies are the ones making the money. And we're just the product walking around.
How can we make more money off of something we haven't made money off yet? Is like the only way for the economy to get bigger at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Like you got.
So really, they should be paying us.
Yeah. Is that what Biden's
Well,
going
they
to do?
won't.
Is he going to give us a UBI?
all of
Somebody's going to. Somebody
all
will.
of capitalism is just an extraction of wealth from the bottom of the economy to the top of the economy, and that's going to be true no matter what.
It is very much.
They're not going to pay you to give them your data.
It seems to be meaningful that like the most simple and alarmist sci-fi is the one that holds up the best.
Yeah,
Silicon Valley is going to be paying us. If the government doesn't do it, Silicon Valley already has the plans to do it.
Well, yeah, because they recognize that you have, like, if you starve out working people to a certain degree, like that actually negatively impact your ability to, like, they recognize that wealth is extracted from people.
Yeah.
Like, they know that. So you can't have all the poor people. Like, I think there's like a kind of like insane evangelical right-wing reality in which it's like, well, just let the fucking poor people die. You know what I mean? But I think the Silicon Valley people are much more like realpolitik. Like, they know you can't kill off all the poor people because you need the poor people in order to extract all the capital.
Well, yeah, they need the pump for their money machine to keep going because they're planning on gutting out there and mining those diamond asteroids now. You know?
Really?
Sure. Yeah, they're all making their own little spaceships so they can get out there and get the new resources that we're just about able to touch. Oh my God, we're almost going to get there. I just need to be able to have people pay me to send someone go grocery shopping for them so that I can make sure that can be produced.
Dude, you want to do something dystopian? Go to the Whole Foods in Harbor East sometime.
What?
It's crazy. Everyone shopping there is shopping for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And they're
Actually,
all
I worked there, and I always thought that I would really prefer it if the only people there were people who worked at Whole Foods and people who worked for the delivery thing.
Yeah.
Because like all of us there to work, no one's like being a fucking asshole because they need to get someone to like serve the fucking assholes. So it is dystopian and it's fucked up, and I hate that. I hate that like Amazon owns these things, and I hate how like terrible they are, and I wish that those delivery things weren't fucked up because like there's nothing wrong with ordering groceries to be delivered and having someone talk to you, but you're like, how could that possibly be a good job if people are treated the way that they are, and they like have to like they're just like who do the shopping are so frantic because they know they're about to get yelled at, like no matter what happens, basically, and they're like worried about their.
Well, it's also really funny. It's also really funny because I was just reading this article about this like sort of like luxury bunker thing that this guy has built in an old missile silo, where it's like all these layers down into the ground, and it's basically just like a condo. But they have like all these, it's like super fancy, you know, they have like an aquaponics lab where they grow all the fresh vegetables. They have like a movie theater. They have this like whole recreation area with like a swimming pool, and there's like these murals of like island landscapes, and there's like a bar, and there's all this stuff. But the guy's like this journalist is like going on a tour with a guy who's like doing this thing, like building this thing. And it's something like 70 people can live in there for like 5 years or something. So, but he's like, yeah, people look at this stuff and they think, what I was thinking of is actually there's a grocery store basically in there, and everyth's like already paid for when you buy a condo in there, because it's like the condo is like $3 million or whatever. But there's this thing. He's like, you have to. His whole thing when he's on this tour, he's like explaining to the journalist, like, people think that this is like weird and like luxury or whatever, but like you have to have. This is like shit that you have to have for people to not go crazy. So he's like, you have to kind of like encourage people to like go to the grocery store level and go and like get the food and like
Yeah.
as if they're shopping and like they see each other in the grocery store. Like you have to have this shit or people will go insane and like start killing each other basically.
It's very relevant to this book.
Yeah. But so yeah, but he was just like this stuff all seems like it's luxury or whatever, but it's really just like what you have to like keep people alive. Basically.
And also it is luxury.
Yes.
Community. Yeah, community is luxury, but also essential to not go insane.
But and he was talking about he had like worked with this person that had worked on one of those 90s like biosphere projects, you know.
Pauly Shore.
He was like, this is all based on like prior experience. Like we know people just need a certain amount of whatever, or like everyone needs to have like a 4-hour workday at least, and then they have like rotating tasks that they do or whatever, so they don't get upset.
I want to go there. I want to live in an ordered society where someone has thought about my well-being.
Well, you get to do that if you have like $1 million.
I guess that's the way it always works.
If you have
Society's constantly thinking about your
well-being. If you have $1 million to spend on a condo that you might live in if the world collapses, like everyone is spending all day thinking about your fucking well-being.
Yeah. Our entire culture is geared towards your specific well-being.
It's Worthington's Law. If you make more money, you're better than.
You guys, I have to go because it's 2:00.
Yeah. Okay. I gotta mow my lawn.
You have a lawn?
Yeah, I gotta mow my lawn. It's overgrown.
I thought you said you were gonna call your mom, and I thought Mark was like, "You have a mom."
Mom?
I like it.
You weren't just an embryo like the rest of us?
I just didn't know that you had any kind of grass, like in your backyard.
Yeah, it's all grass. I mean, there's a little. I think you went back there once or twice. Yeah, there's like a little walk, and there's.
Nice.
In fact, there's a lot of grass.
There's too much grass right now.
Too much.
There's a
Do you
lot
have
of
a riding
grass.
mower?
A riding mower. It's not that big.
It's gonna take him like 10 minutes.
No, I'm.
You
Yeah,
just turn it on, and then you can turn it off.
It's just there in one place. You just get on it, press the button.
I have a
You're like,
lawn
boom.
underneath
I
this
did it.
mower.
Okay, you guys,
2
I gotta
weeks,
go.
chapter
You
4.
wanna do 2 weeks?
Chapter
2
4 and
weeks.
5.
2 weeks, one chapter.
4 and 5. We'll
Yeah,
do 4 and
weeks,
5
one
next
chapter.
time.
Or for possibility of 5.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. I'll miss
Bye.
all of you. You're good people. I like hanging out with you a lot.
Yeah. This
Thanks.
was
I
a
like
good
this book.
conversation today. I was really happy about the truth and fact thing. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun.
Shannick, thanks for hanging out. If you're still here, if you didn't get turned off by all the talk of Baltimore politics.
There's also,
I was ignoring that part, thinking about people who might not be in Baltimore.
I think there was technical
They
difficulties.
know. They
if
all need
anyone
to know
knows.
what's going on.
All right.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.